You're having a laugh. I'm an English teacher, not a Tomb Raider.
Dead animals. Hundreds of them.
This is not good, guys.
Are we gonna... Please!
Is there anybody there? Hello?
Beneath our feet, massive cave systems sprawl that unanimously shut out light, distort sound, and leave living things with one question: which way is out? Neil Marshall took this fear as the basis for The Descent, subsiding on the idea of a horror film set in a derelict cave, far before the film's monsters were added into the project. As the name would suggest, The Descent is about a journey down into the dark, something we experience through the female protagonists, all skilled climbers, hikers, and divers that enter the abyss. But it's also about dealing with loss and grief and the limits that the mind and body can go before breaking. While the setting within the cave may initially seem like a simple production choice, I think it's incredibly important that Marshall's film began with the primal fear of the unknown depths, not just a fear of monsters. When tied to the film's narrative driver of grief, we're introduced to a few readings of both alternate endings of the film.
Oh, is she? Well, she's here. One step at a time, eh?
Though they'd initially considered shooting in actual caves, the production team ultimately decided that this would be too dangerous and time-consuming, opting instead to build realistic sets. The aim was to create a world of subterranean darkness, and to achieve this, a total of 21 cave sets were built using treated polyurethane. Photos and videos of cave systems found around the world were recreated in set pieces that were then reused and altered to represent different parts of the cave. Considering the women were straying further away from natural light sources, the crew experimented with limiting the lighting to what the characters brought with them into the caves, and all of these decisions were critical in adding to the claustrophobic experience on screen. After a pacey opening sequence of whitewater rafting with her adventurous friends, our protagonist Sarah Carter loses her husband and daughter in a horrific car accident. Still coping with the loss a year later, she's invited to reunite with her friends on a caving trip deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Beth is Sarah's closest friend, Juno is the mastermind behind their trip. Samantha and Rebecca are old friends of the group, while newcomer Holly is a thrill seeker along for the ride. Heading out, they drive towards the caves, but as they inch closer, not only are they reminded of the many dangers of going into a cave.
Don't go wandering off. When you think it's dark when you turn out the lights, well, down there, it's pitch black. You can get dehydration, disorientation, claustrophobia.
But they also come across some bad omens, including a rotting carcass and suspicious bloodied fingerprints. Regardless, they head deeper inside. Sarah's the first to get stuck in a press and understandably freaks out.
Listen, the worst thing that could have happened to you's already happened, okay? And you're still here.
And as if it hurt, the cave responds. At this point, I think it's important to consider that the descent into the caverns is accompanied by a huge theme, overcoming trauma. The reason Sarah finds herself at this reunion is obviously to reconnect with her friends, but more importantly, to overcome the bleak aftermath of the tragedy. The visualization of her confronting this trauma takes the image of darkness. The Maze of Caverns immerses Sarah in a world of subterranean darkness, where light, and the absence of it, characterizes the unknown, untrodden path. With the passage collapsed, they find themselves trapped, and Juno reveals she doesn't have a map. Worse still, this isn't the cave system they thought it was, but an unmarked system, meaning that they will have to find their own way out as rescue teams won't even know where they are. Agreeing to push on, tensions begin to flare.
We all lost something in that crash.
With the darkness pressing down on them, they cross a ravine and discover a cave painting, indicating 2 cave exits. But just before we can feel relief, we see the silhouettes of creatures in the dark. Based on observations made by Sam, a biology student, and judging by how they move in the cave, the crawlers appear to be a race of cave-dwelling humanoids that use their maneuverability, speed, strength, and a form of echolocation to effectively stalk and hunt their prey in the dark.
They're totally blind. And judging from what we've seen, I'd say they use sound to hunt with. Like a bat.
Pushing on, they come across a den filled with animal remains and are overwhelmed by crawlers. Sarah's knocked unconscious while Holly is killed by the vicious hunters, causing Juno to enter into a warrior's madness that would make Thor proud. In this state, Juno accidentally mortally wounds Beth, who startles her. Leaving her for dead, she comes across more cave drawings that point to what appears to be a way out before reuniting with Samantha and Rebecca. Sarah then regains consciousness and comes across Beth, who tells her that Juno did this to her, before handing over Juno's pendant, snatched during the previous encounter, revealing Juno's affair with Sarah's husband. Now in agony, Beth begs for death and Sarah reluctantly obliges. As a result of this and the malevolence of the unrelenting darkness surrounding her, Sarah's past and present become harder to reconcile, ultimately sending her over the edge. Losing Samantha and Rebecca to the crawlers, Juno and Sarah make their way to the exit and pair off against a horde of the creatures. But with her pain reaching critical mass, Sarah devolves into madness. Her disorientation within the caverns, writhing defense against the crawlers, and explosive anger turn her from a pitied widow to a vengeful husk. Showing Juno the pendant, she ruthlessly strikes her in the leg and leaves her for dead, before making her way up towards the light and clambering back to the car, only to be greeted by a hallucination of Juno in the passenger seat. If you're watching the original US release, this is where the story ends, but I think that the alternate ending best encapsulated the overarching themes of the film. In it, having been consumed by anger, Sarah is unable to make her way to the light. Instead, she wakes up back in the cave, alone, surrounded by crawlers, with no hope of escape or redemption.
What about Beth? Is I die?
Sarah ultimately gets her revenge on Juno, who not only had an affair with her husband and accidentally killed Beth, but had basically been responsible for putting the entire group in danger by literally guiding them into the abyss. But there is no catharsis. Worse still, in Marshall's alternate ending, there is absolutely no hope, with Sarah ultimately losing her way in every sense of the word.
These girls are game for anything, and on screen they're just mind-blowing. They're a really, really solid bunch. From its original conception, I envisioned this film as being very, very dark, both in tone and in visual style, which was to make it as dark as possible.
With its measured pacing, effective cinematography, solid performances, and ability to drastically raise the stakes and source of danger, The Descent keeps us on the edge of our seats. Marshall slowly ramps up the tension and gives the characters more to deal with than just getting out of the cave. And just when it couldn't get any worse, we're introduced to the terrifying crawlers. It's easy then to see why The Descent becomes so unbearably tense as we continue. What starts out as a quick talking cast of 6 slowly becomes a group of very few words, as they're each forced to engage with primal instincts in their struggle for survival. All of these factors help ground the literal descent into a monstrous cave, and supplement it with an allegorical descent into madness, from which there is no return. Gory, tense, vicious, enthralling and surprising, The Descent is an unrelenting look at the human psyche and its limits by a director in top form. Well, that's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. And yeah, if you have any other suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
I told you I saw someone! That was not a human being! Screw this! Let's take our chance and pick a tunnel! Move!